Friends, welcome to a new chess video. This is probably going to become one of your favorite videos on all of YouTube. And I'll tell you why. I'm going to show you a very simple opening to play against e4 or e5. It's super easy. It's an opening we've tried out on the channel before, but we've never explained it in as much depth as in this video, okay? Check this out. If you have less than 2100, even if you have less than 2,200 ELO, this opening can work for you in every situation. Fast games, slow games, blitz games. Why? Because it's a really strong opening. Now, if you're an international master or grandmaster, I only recommend playing it in very fast time controls, okay? I'm going to explain why. First, we're going to play d4. I'm sure this kind of setup looks familiar to you, right? We've seen something similar on this channel several times. However, pay attention, here there's only one good response. It's pawn takes pawn, okay? Obviously, we're threatening to capture if they don't. All right, and after pawn takes pawn, we're going to recapture with the queen. Notice that it looks like a Scandinavian defense, but with the white pieces, right? Here, the most logical move, and there's no doubt about it, is knight to c6, because while developing the knight, it attacks our queen, and we're going to play queen to e3. All right, this setup right here is the one you need to remember, because it's the one that's going to help us win a ton of games. It's going to allow us to carry out a very simple attack plan that's easy to remember, and no matter what our opponent does, we'll be able to use it in all our games. I want this video to be super comprehensive. Why? Because I'm going to show all the possible responses from your opponent, no matter what they do. So let's start with the first one. If you want, I'll show you what the best line for black is, so we can get it out of the way. The hardest one to punish, okay? Which is this one here, when they give us this check with the bishop. Now, I'm going to show you what happens if they come here, which is very easy to chase away, if they come over here more passively, or if they come here. Any move, okay? But first, let's start with bishop to b5, which, according to the engines, is the strongest move of all. You probably already know the first solution. The first response is c3. Could we play bishop to d2 and knight to c3? Let's see, knight to c3 doesn't seem very good, since after bishop takes, we'd be left with doubled pawns. Bishop to d2 seems a little better. However, c3 is the best. Why? Because we're gaining a tempo against this bishop. You know how important it is to have an extra tempo in chess? Now we're driving this bishop away, and if it wants to make its previous move worthwhile, it has to retreat over here. If it retreats backwards, then we'll just stick to our plan, which I'll explain to you later, of bishop to e2, and that's it, right? But usually, they'll come over here, since they came to attack the king and want to keep up the pressure, right? Obviously, that's the most common thing to do, so what do we do next? We should continue after this. It's very simple. We just go ahead with this move here, bishop to c4, okay? Pay attention to the plan. Our plan is to attack with the bishop toward the castled king. Notice that when they castle, this bishop will be directly aiming at the king, and we'll also have some spectacular ideas to bring the queen into the attack. You're going to love this opening, especially if you're an attacking player, right? You'll see why. It's amazing. I'm absolutely sure you're going to love it. By the way, I'm recording this with a cough I just can't shake, so I'm trying to record in a way that sounds as good as possible without straining my voice. You leave me a nice, like, I'd really appreciate it. Pay attention, bishop to c4. How can they continue? Well, they can continue in many ways. They should castle, right? Look, if they play d5 first, they've lost the game, because after pawn takes pawn, we give a discover check and we're attacking over here. This is a terribly bad move, isn't it? Just to develop this bishop. If they develop this knight normally, notice that we'd have this move here, and this knight's options would be pretty limited. If it comes over here, we can come here to target this square, then kick it out and come here. So it's really simple if they play knight to f6. But now, what happens if they play knight to e7, which seems like the best move? Why? Because it develops a knight well, we can't really attack it, and besides, they can castle on the next move. Super good. How should we continue? Well, our attack plan is the one I mentioned to you. Queen to g3. If at any point I'm going too fast, forgive me, but I don't want this to drag on forever since I have a lot of information to share. You can watch the video completely free as many times as you want, okay? Look, what queen to g3 does is put really strong pressure on this point. Most likely, our opponent doesn't want to come here, because if we place the bishop, they would never be able to castle again, right? That's why, now that they can, they castle to defend this point with the king. And here we reach the point where we really need to memorize the attack well, okay? Look, you don't need to memorize the exact moves, but rather the plan. How are we going to start? Well, with the move h4, super simple. What do we want? To attack the entire king structure. What are we threatening? Well, we're probably threatening this move right here. Look, the classic bishop to h6 move. If they capture us, they'd lose because it would be an illegal move, so they can't capture us. So here they want to prevent this, and many play this move here. And you might say, well, we can kick it out with the knight, actually with the pawn, with the pawn. In fact, that's what we should do. However, they have this dangerous move where the knights defend each other, and now we're targeting this bishop here. Here we need to think of a really good move, okay? And the move isn't to move the bishop away, like many of you might be thinking. Instead, pay attention. The move is this one right here. What are we threatening? At this point, we're completely winning, you know? We're threatening the queen. They can't play f6. Just look at the power of this bishop here, which keeps that pawn from moving. So the only solution they have, since there are no pieces to block, is to play queen to e8, moving the queen out of the way. And now the attack is decisive. All we have to do is bring the bishop here, bishop to f6, and we're threatening checkmate. We're also threatening the knight, but it doesn't matter. What we're really threatening is checkmate. Ways to stop the checkmate include giving up the knight. In that case, we simply take it. The most logical move would be to play g6, right? Because now they completely defend against mate. But here, they can't escape, because after pawn takes pawn, we're completely winning and will deliver checkmate in just a few moves. Here they only have two options. Look, they can't take with this pawn because our bishop is once again causing trouble. Just look at that, huh? So they have two options. Take with the pawn, which would be checkmate on the next move, see how simple that is, or take with the knight, in which case all we have to do is the same thing again. Sacrifice the queen. Why? Because they can't capture with this pawn since it's pinned, and they can't capture with this other pawn either, because that would be checkmate. Notice that the king can't move. So the only legal move here is to capture the queen with this pawn, and then we deliver checkmate. See how simple it is? d4, when they capture, we recapture with the queen, and when they attack her, we move her to e3. What did we just see? Well, we just saw the best move according to Stockfish, which is the bishop to b4, giving us the check. We should play c3 and follow the plan I just explained to you, but there are many more options. Look, a very common move in this case is bishop to c5. And notice what a big mistake that is. We should simply capture the bishop and that's it. You'd be surprised how many people online play bishop to c5 right away, attacking the queen without realizing we can capture this bishop for free. If they play this, then we use the first plan. If they play this, we capture. If they play this, it's terrible because they won't be able to get this bishop out of here. My plan is simple. Look, I'm going to give you all the options. Knight to c3, bishop to d2, and castle long, and we play a super comfortable game. Notice what's good about this. In these openings, we don't sacrifice any material, so we can always play a super comfortable game. If they play here, we'll see that in a bit, but our idea would be to come here to attack this point since they've stopped defending it, okay? But let's start with the more logical moves. Look, knight to f6 is a super logical move, and we've seen e5 was the move I was suggesting. When they play knight to f6, you have two options. Either play perfectly, as the engine says, little by little, which is the same plan of knight to c3, bishop to d2, and long castle. Notice that we'd have a very easy position to play, and you can always attack on this side here. Very simple to play. What I like to do, which isn't the best option according to the engines, but it's very hard to find the solution for, is to play e5, all right? When do I recommend playing e5, and when do I recommend playing knight to c3? If you're in a tournament against a very strong opponent in a game that lasts an hour and a half, play knight to c3, okay? And follow this. If you're playing an online game or a rapid tournament, without a doubt, play e5. Even though it's not objectively the best move, it's just too strong, and it's really hard to find the right solution, all right? Look, here there are two options for the black pieces. Move this knight or bishop to d4 or here, which seems the strongest because they hit us with a double attack, right? Bishop to d4 is way too simple. We play queen to d5. Right? We play queen to d5, attacking this knight, which has to move. And we're going to keep gaining time, right? Very simple. But what happens if they play what looks like a much stronger move, attacking our queen? They make us move the queen and also attack this pawn with two knights. Well, it's very simple. Here you should play queen to e2, okay? And here, pay attention, because taking this pawn is already a mistake. According to what the engines recommend, and I'll explain this too because I want everything to be clear, they should play d6, giving up the pawn, because after pawn takes pawn, we're given a discover check. They can't recapture, so they have to play this move instead. And notice that here we could capture, we could play knight to f3, whatever we want, all right? And we'll have a material advantage, right? All right, that's according to Stockfish, right? The best move is to play d6, but obviously, Chessteacher, if they've already made the double attack, it's much more likely they'll capture this pawn from us. And that way, they end up with an extra pawn. Well, here they lose the knight because they've put it right in the pin. No matter how much they're defending each other and can defend really well, when should we attack a piece that's pinned? We should attack it when we can attack it with a pawn. Notice that now this knight is lost, no matter what they do. If they defend it, we capture it with a pawn, we take a knight. But what's most surprising here is that most people play an even worse move to try to save themselves, which is knight to e4. Here, we're completely winning, but knight to e4 tries to set up a double attack, a triple attack from here when we move the queen, trying to find some kind of resource. But what we should do here is very simple. We shouldn't capture here because we lose the queen. Instead, we capture with our own queen. Queen to d5 check, and not only that, but we'll also capture this knight. The only thing they can do is move back, and now we put pressure with this pawn, and not only have we won one knight, we've won two knights. If they chase our queen away, what should we do? Well, the easiest thing in the world is just pull it back. And once it's pulled back, it still keeps up the pressure. What if they check us with the queen? I don't care. I attack your queen, and when it retreats, notice that now it can't really do anything. Maybe another check somewhere, but even here we could attack it with the bishop. Now it really does have to retreat, and we would simply capture this knight. Two extra pieces. This is a really important variation that I've come across several times in online games. Instead of developing this bishop to squares that are pretty bad, they want to develop it to c5, but to avoid losing it, they play b6 first so they can bring it here later. And on top of that, they're giving it a spot to develop it. Notice that they'd have a good position. So we have a killer plan for when they play this move here. You just stick to your plan, all right? Always remember the plan itself, not the exact moves. Knight to c3, we don't know what to do, so we're going to stick to our castling plan. However, pay attention because that's not always the case. When the queen attacks us, do you remember what I told you? What happens when this bishop stops defending this square? I'm sure you do. We need to bring the queen to g3, putting incredible pressure on this spot right here. You see it, right? Not only that, but we're also threatening this c7 square in the future. The knight can jump there. Man, a lot of threats can come from that. All right, here they have two ways to defend this square. And I'm going to show you how to punish both of them. And that's why this video is so good, right? Because no matter what the opponent does, we'll have them under control. So if we really study this video, we'll have this opening well established to play at any time. That's why you should save this video, since you'll always have it for free. All right, the two ways to defend here are, one is g6, which is actually pretty bad. And why is that? Because it leaves all the dark squares open, and on top of that, this bishop isn't here. It's all the way on the other side of the board. So how can we take advantage of this? Well, I recommend you take advantage of it with your minor pieces, both the bishop and the knight. Notice that if they come in here, we can also bring in the knight, and that would already be a disaster for them. Then, if they come in this way, we can even bring in the queen. So it's just too strong, right? We can see that logically, if they try to defend with g6, the problems they have with the dark squares are just too powerful. Also, notice one thing. When they come here and here, we also have possible e5 moves to keep up the pin, right? In short, g6 is a terrible move. But what happens if they try to play queen to f6? Which seems a little bit better. Why? Because what they're trying to do is defend this point without getting caught in any pins. Now, this move could be very good, but we have one that's much better. What is this move? Well, it's bringing in this knight to e5 that I was telling you about. We threaten the queen, and we threaten this square here. But okay, it looks like we're threatening a lot here, but actually black has two moves to save themselves, right? It's to try to exchange queens right away, either here or here. It would be the same, right? If they come here, they want to exchange queens right away to prevent this knight jump. However, they don't prevent anything since we could jump just the same. Why? Because we're given check first. They can't take because even though there's a queen in the way, this queen is defending the knight. Notice that if queen takes knight, queen takes queen. Then check. They have to move. And now, yes, instead of capturing the rook first, which you could also do, I recommend you capture the queen first to avoid problems. And when they capture your queen, then you simply capture the rook. And we end up with an extra piece. So the plan is, when they play bishop 6 to bring the bishop to c5, attacking our queen is very simple. Knight to c3, queen to g3. We come to attack here and then jump with the knight to the center of the board, making a double attack. All right, I'll quickly explain what happens if they play bishop to e7, which is super interesting. And to finish, I'll tell you the most important thing of all, what happens if they don't capture this pawn right away. Because of course, chess teacher, it's all good if they capture here. The whole video works for me. But if they don't capture, how do I punish that? So stay with me until the end, because I'll explain it to you in just a moment. And also, if you stick around until the end, I'll give you a little gift. That's it, come on. First, let's see what happens in the very important bishop e7 variation, which we haven't looked at yet. And the plan is very simple. First, we're going to carry out this plan here. Why? Because they've moved the bishop, just like we said they would. Very well, now they can continue defending this pawn in several ways. What's the natural move? Well, g6. Why? Because the other option would be to move this bishop again. If they move this bishop again, you just use the usual plan. You can't move this bishop because they capture here. First, you need to come here. Pay attention. It's better if they don't capture, because if they do, by capturing, they stop defending this point forever since this bishop disappears. It's a really bad idea if they capture. Hopefully they do, but you would just go with this plan. Bishop to d2 and castle, okay? You end up better off because they've moved the same piece too many times. So what happens if they play g6, which is the natural move? Notice that I'm showing you all the options. So we're going to do the same thing, knight to c3. That's why I love this video, because the ideas are so similar that no matter what our opponent does, we're going to keep playing the same way. Look, here we want them to castle, right? Nah. What happens when they weaken their position? Well, we can bring the bishop to h6, like we said, and now they can't castle anymore because the king can't get past this barrier here. So they have to try to castle long as the only way out of this. Develop the bishop, develop the queen, and castle. There's no other way, so we keep developing. For example, bishop to e2. They have to continue, for instance, with this bishop over here because they also want to develop the queen. So if they move it here, they wouldn't be able to develop the queen. They have to bring it further forward. It's the only way, you see? All of this is forced. d6 because they have to come here. Now, this bishop can't go here or here. It can only come here to make room for the queen, so we castle long. Notice that we're following exactly the same plan the whole time, and now, after this move, I recommend a beautiful move here, which is queen to f4. Notice, what are we doing now? Well, we're already putting pressure on this knight. For now, we're not doing anything, but in the future, we can bring this bishop here, attack the rook, and also target this knight, which could have drastic consequences, right? So now they have to try to prevent this, and they have to bring the rook here. There's no other way. You see that, right? If they castle long, we simply come here, attack here and here, and they're gonna lose material. So notice the strength of queen to f4. They have to come here, and now we can, for example, jump with the knight to d5, attacking this knight. Here, they might see the opportunity and say, oh, it's true that now there's no way to defend this knight because it's attacked by two pieces, and the only way would be to move the queen back. But here they might say, well, I'll just capture and that's it. But if they capture, notice that pawn takes pawn delivers a huge fork that wins a piece. It attacks the knight and it attacks the bishop. Protected by the rook, so it can't be captured. The only solution is to retreat with the queen. You see it, right? Are you following me? It's very simple. But here, what would we do? We would just continue with knight takes bishop. Now they have to recapture with the queen, because if they take with the king, they'd lose castling rights. And now, how can we continue? Well, simply bishop to g5, pinning this knight, and we're back in the same situation. See how easy it is to attack? I'm just showing you an example. You don't need to memorize the moves. I'm just showing you an example of how to continue so you can see how to keep up the pressure. It's very simple. Now this knight is going to be lost no matter what. Whatever they do, we're going to capture here. And on top of that, if they castle, they're also going to lose the rook. But if not, they're definitely going to lose the knight. And now, super, super important, what happens if, after making this move here, they don't capture us? Well, you really need to keep this in mind because we study very thoroughly what happens against all the pawn takes pawn and queen takes pawn moves, right? Logically, in the Angel of Age, there are 10,000 moves. Well, 10,000 is infinite. If they play something else, for example, here we could attack, we could come over here, right? But obviously, we're going to look for the most critical line, which is knight to c6. Otherwise, the video would last 17 hours, right? Once we've studied all this, notice that now we're going to see what happens if they don't capture here. And it's easy, but you need to know how to play it because otherwise you're going to lose games. If they don't capture, they have to defend since we're attacking. If they make a dumb move without defending, we just capture ourselves, right? Very good. Now, what happens if they defended with knight to c6, and what happens if they defended with d6? Since those are the only two moves that defended. There are also these moves, but they're really bad, okay? If they play this, they're just stuck with a bishop that blocks the other one from coming out. And if they play this, they're leaving this bishop unable to get out. All right, with knight to c6, all you have to do is play d5, attacking this knight. I'm sure a lot of you were thinking, well, but now I'm giving the knight a key square, a really strong square, right in the center of the board. Here, they've lost the game because c3 loses the knight. Do you see it? There's no way to drive this knight out. Sorry, I mean to save it. If it comes here, the bishop is waiting. So notice how simple it is. We attack. If they don't take, they defend. And if they come here, well, now they've already lost the game with c3. But it's true that they're not forced to walk right into the lion's den here. They can move back. So how should we play? A move I've always liked is this one right here. Although it's not the one I recommend, you can play it, one, because we're forcing them to come here. However, now we get into discovered attacks, but anyway, it's a move I've always liked. We double pawns, we block this structure a bit, but there's a move I like much more, which is knight to f3, directly putting massive pressure on the e5 square. A really, really good move. So, how should they play now? Well, obviously, the most logical thing is to get this knight out of here since it's annoying, and at the same time defend this square. Now, we need to undermine this knight because we don't like it here, and if we manage to drive it away, we would simply win this pawn and practically the game. Not because of the pawn itself, but because of the space advantage we would have, right? All right, so what happens then? When we play h4, there's only one way to stop this advance. You see that, right? There's only one way, and that's h5. What does h5 allow us to do? Well, it lets us play very comfortably. For example, we could bring in the bishop, and this line would be just way, way too strong. Notice that they're basically running out of squares and becoming very restricted. If they push this pawn, this knight is going to be super weak since no one will be able to protect it. And not only will it be super weak, but also notice that the king will end up really exposed too. They'd be leaving these squares unprotected. We could simply pull this bishop back, and our position would be 1,000 times better than our opponent's. And what happens if they play the most common move when they don't capture, which is d6? Super important and super cool. You're going to be amazed. All you have to do is play knight to c3, defending this pawn here. But if they capture, it's super important, not to recapture with the knight, but to recapture with the queen. That's the option we should always keep in mind. Whenever they capture on d4, we recapture with the queen. They might try to chase her away, but now we don't even need to move her back. Why? Because we can bring the bishop to b4 like in the Spanish opening and pin this knight here. Now the queen can't be captured anymore. It's true, and I'm sure all of you are thinking about bishop to d7 to avoid doubling pawns and to get out of the pin. But here, what we simply need to do is exchange this bishop for the knight, even if it means giving up the bishop pair, because now this queen is perfectly placed in the center, and no one, absolutely no one, can chase her away. Now what are we doing? Well, notice one thing. They can't move the bishop because we would simply come in here. So this queen is putting a lot of pressure and is really limiting the bishop's development, right? What's going on? Here, they have a lot more options besides developing the bishop. All right, for example. Well, first, it's our move, right? They've just captured here. So what should we do? Well, the move I recommend is this one here, bishop to g5. Super, super strong, attacking the queen. Look how simple this play is, because now they only have 3 options, right? What are they? Bishop to e7 loses. Why? Because we would simply take here, and now there's no way to defend the rook. So bishop to e7, if they cover with the bishop, they're losing on the spot. If they cover with the knight, logically, they're putting themselves into a pin that we could take advantage of with the move e5, right? So here we're limited to just one move, f6, which already looks a bit odd, but well, it seems to defend perfectly. How should we continue? Very simple, we move the bishop back. Now they can develop much more easily. The knight should go first, because if they develop the bishop first, this bishop won't be able to move anywhere, and also this knight won't be able to get out. So first the knight goes to come and attack the bishop, and then develop their own bishop. Very simple, knight to c3, I'll go through it quickly so you can see how easy it is. Knight to g6 knight to g6 attacking the bishop. It doesn't matter if they capture us, we stick to our plan, which is always the same, castle long. And now if they capture us, it's no problem because we recapture with the knight. Very good. Now they can develop bishop to 7, and they've completed their development, but notice that here we're already completely winning. We bring the knight in to attack this bishop. Now they have to decide what to do. Give up this bishop or give up that bishop? And here black has to think, which bishop do I prefer? The one on the light squares, which is actually moving and active, or the one on the dark squares that can't move? Well, I prefer this one, so I'd rather you capture the one that's useless to me. So what do I do? Well, I'll just castle long, but we, being much smarter, aren't going to capture right away. Instead, we're going to put even more pressure with the other knight. And notice that now we're actually forcing them to capture this knight here. If they don't, they'll lose the whole bishop, since they can't recapture with the queen. So when they capture here, look how simple it is. We capture with the queen, we attack this point. They can't push it forward because they'd lose the rook. And if they push this pawn, we stop moving the queen and instead capture here with check. I'll go through this quickly because these are just ideas, all right? Notice that I took this from a game with the white pieces, and here we're about to checkmate very soon. When they move away, we give a check, and when they move again, it's simply checkmate right here. Look at what an incredibly good opening this is. Give me a big like if you enjoyed it, and if you made it to the end, I've got a little gift for you. In the description, if you click the link, you'll see I'm giving you a whole month completely free in the community of Chessteacher Premium, all right? Yes, only for those of you who stayed until the end. If you click the link in the description, you'll get a whole month of the premium community completely free, okay? You'll see it's super easy, all right? Chessteacher is giving you a gift. Just click on Request Now, and where it asks for your email, simply enter your email address. That's it, super simple. I really hope you enjoyed this video a lot. I recorded as best as I could because I tried to hold back my cough. Sorry if my voice sounded a little weird, all right? I hope you liked it. Save it forever, and I'll see you tomorrow in the next video, friends. Goodbye.